The champagne glass shattered at my feet, sending crystal shards across the marble floor like tiny diamonds. My stepmother Andrea's laughter echoed through the ballroom, that cruel, high-pitched sound I'd learned to hate over the past 9 months. Security guards were already moving toward me, their hands reaching for my arms. "Throw this trash out," Andrea commanded, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Little did she know, I wasn't just a maid, I was a billionaire, and in 60 seconds, her entire world would collapse. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this nightmare really began, 3 months before that gala, at my father's funeral. The rain fell hard that day, as if the sky itself was mourning. I stood by my father's grave, numb, watching the coffin lower into the ground. He'd died in a car accident, sudden, unexpected, devastating. At 25 years old, I'd lost the only person who truly loved me. Andrea stood beside me, dressed in black designer clothes, crying dramatically into a silk handkerchief. Her daughter Jessica rubbed her back, whispering comfort. To everyone watching, they looked like the grieving widow and stepdaughter. But I saw something else. I caught the brief moment when Andrea's eyes met Jessica's over my shoulder, a look of satisfaction, of victory. Something in my gut twisted. Something was very, very wrong. 2 days later, we gathered in the lawyer's office for the reading of the will. The room smelled like old books and leather. Andrea sat across from me, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently on the armrest. Jessica scrolled through her phone, barely paying attention. They were confident. After all, Andrea had been married to my father for 3 years. Surely she'd get something substantial. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading. "I, William Mercer, being of sound mind and body, leave my entire estate, including Sterling Industries, all properties and financial assets, to my daughter, Charlotte Mercer." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Andrea's coffee cup hit the floor. "What?" she shrieked, jumping to her feet. "This is impossible. I was his wife, his real family." Jessica threw the folder she was holding across the room, papers scattering everywhere. "That little brat gets everything? After 3 years of taking care of him?" I sat frozen, clutching my father's watch, the one he always wore, the one the hospital had given me with his personal effects. The lawyer continued calmly, but I barely heard the details. Something about trusts and conditions and legal procedures. All I could focus on was Andrea's face, the mask completely gone now, replaced by pure, undiluted rage. "You'll regret this, little girl," Andrea hissed as we left the office. "Mark my words. I should have been more afraid. I should have seen what was coming." 2 days later, I came home to find the locks changed. I stood on the porch of my childhood home, the house where my mother had died, where my father had raised me, where every memory lived, and my key didn't work. I rang the doorbell, confused, thinking maybe Andrea had changed them for security reasons after my father's death. Jessica opened the door, a smirk playing on her lips. Behind her stood Andrea and 2 security guards I didn't recognize. "Can I help you?" Jessica asked, as if I were a stranger. "What's going on?" "Why don't my keys work?" Andrea stepped forward, holding a folder. "Charlotte, dear, we need to talk. Your father owed us, emotionally and financially, and we have proof that you're not actually his biological daughter." She opened the folder, showing me a DNA test. My heart stopped. "This is a lie," I whispered. "My father would never—" "Sign over the inheritance," Andrea interrupted, her voice cold as ice, "or we'll release this to every news outlet in the country. We'll destroy his reputation, claim he had an affair, that you're the product of his infidelity. Is that what you want? Your father's name dragged through the mud?" I looked at the document, at the numbers and graphs that supposedly proved I wasn't William Mercer's daughter. My hands shook. "I need time to think." "You have no time. Sign now or get out." I refused. I don't know where the courage came from, but something in my father's voice echoed in my mind. "Never let them see you break, Charlie." So I stood straight, looked Andrea in the eye, and said, "No." The security guards grabbed my arms. Jessica brought out a single suitcase, my clothes thrown in haphazardly. Andrea pulled out a stack of bills and threw them at my feet. "Here's what trash like you deserves," she laughed. $20. Don't spend it all in one place. They threw me out of my own home." The door slammed and I stood on the sidewalk, suitcase in hand, with nowhere to go. That night, I slept in my car parked outside the Sterling Industries building. The leather seats were cold, and every passing car's headlights made me jump. I cried until I had no tears left, clutching my father's watch, wishing I could hear his voice one more time. That's when I remembered. He'd told me something once, years ago after my mother died. "Charlie, if something ever happens to me, if you're ever in trouble you can't handle alone, call this number. Trust no one else." I'd thought it was just grief talking, his way of coping with loss by being overprotective. But now, with shaking hands, I opened the back of his watch. Inside, taped to the inner casing, was a small card with a phone number. No name, just numbers. I called it. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. A generic automated message. I almost hung up, but desperation made me speak. "This is Charlotte Mercer. My father said to call this number if something happened to him. He's dead. Andrea threw me out. I have nothing left. Please. If anyone gets this, I need help." I ended the call and cried myself to sleep, not expecting anything. The next morning, I woke to knocking on my car window. A man in a driver's uniform stood outside holding an envelope. My heart raced. Was this Andrea's doing? More humiliation? But the man simply handed me the envelope and walked back to a black luxury car parked behind mine. Inside the envelope, a key card, an address in the expensive part of town, and a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. "Your father prepared for this. Come alone. You're safe now." I had nothing to lose. I drove to the address, my beat-up car looking ridiculous in the upscale neighborhood. The key card opened a private elevator that took me to a penthouse apartment. The doors opened, and I stepped into a space so beautiful it took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture, soft lighting. 2 people waited in the living room. One was Mr. Harrison, my father's attorney, the one from the will reading. The other was a woman I'd never seen before. Elegant, probably in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an air of absolute authority. "Hello, Charlotte," Mr. Harrison said gently. "I know you're confused. Please, sit down." The woman extended her hand. "My name is Catherine Wu. I was your father's business partner, his real business partner, and I'm here to tell you everything he couldn't." What came next destroyed and rebuilt my entire understanding of my life. Catherine explained it all, her voice steady and factual. My father had discovered, about 6 months before his death, that Andrea was poisoning him. Slowly, carefully, with substances that mimicked natural illness. He'd gone to the doctor for fatigue and memory issues, and private tests revealed the truth. But here's the thing. My father was already dying. Stage 4 cancer, inoperable, diagnosed a year before he even met Andrea. He had maybe 8 months left, and he'd kept it secret from everyone, including me, not wanting to burden me during my final year of graduate school. When he found out about Andrea's poisoning, Catherine continued, he could have gone to the police. But he investigated further. Andrea had done this before, twice. 2 previous husbands, both wealthy, both died under mysterious circumstances. But she was careful, always just careful enough. No evidence, no proof. The police couldn't touch her. My hands gripped the armrest. And Jessica? Not even her daughter. They're cousins, partners in crime. Jessica plays different roles. Sometimes daughter, sometimes niece, sometimes personal assistant. Whatever helps the con. I felt sick. The car accident wasn't an accident, Mr. Harrison said quietly. Your father was already dying, but they accelerated it. We have evidence now, but we didn't then. That's why we need your help. Catherine leaned forward. Your father spent his last months creating a plan. The will you heard read in the office? That was fake. Well, partially fake. You do inherit everything, but not the way Andrea thinks. The Sterling Industries she believes she can control? It's worthless. A shell company. Your father moved all the real assets years ago into a blind trust. The company she's trying to steal is worth maybe $20 million. Pocket change. The real Sterling Industries, the patents, the technology, the international holdings, that's worth $15 billion. And you, Charlotte, inherited 90% of it. The room spun. $15 billion. You're a billionaire, Catherine said simply. You have been since your father died. You just didn't know it. They showed me documents, bank statements, asset portfolios, numbers so large they stopped meaning anything. But then Mr. Harrison played a video, and I saw my father's face again. I broke down crying before he even spoke. My darling Charlie, his voice came through the speakers, and it was like he was right there. If you're watching this, I'm gone. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you the truth about my illness. I wanted your last months with me to be happy, not overshadowed by death. But I've given you something more important than money. I've given you the power to stop these monsters. Andrea and Jessica have destroyed families, killed innocent people, all for wealth they didn't earn. The police can't touch them without evidence. But you can get that evidence. They think they've won. They think they have everything. Let them believe it. Then destroy them. I know it's a lot to ask, I know it will hurt, but you're the strongest person I've ever known. Your mother would be so proud. I'm so proud. Make them pay, Charlie. Not for me, for all the people they've hurt. I love you forever. The video ended. I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face. Catherine gave me time, then said softly, "We have a plan. But it requires something difficult. You'd have to go back to them, work for them. Let them humiliate you while you gather evidence from the inside. Andrea is planning to sell Sterling Industries, the fake one, to a competitor for $500 million. But she needs board approval, which means finding all the shareholders. She doesn't know you own 90%. You have 1 year before the financial audit that will reveal the truth. Can you handle being their maid, their trash, their punching bag, for up to a year?" I wiped my tears. Grief transformed into something harder, colder. For justice? I'll crawl through hell. And I did. For 9 months, I lived in hell. I went back to Andrea, begging for work. She and Jessica's delight was sickening. They hired me as a maid, minimum wage, worst shifts, most degrading tasks. That first day, Jessica deliberately poured hot coffee on my uniform. "Oops," she laughed. "Clean it up. Trash." I cleaned it up. I cleaned everything. Toilets, floors, windows. I served their dinner parties and listened to Andrea tell guests, "Oh, that's my dead husband's mistake." We keep her out of pity. I was tripped, mocked, given impossible tasks, and punished when I couldn't complete them. Jessica made me eat food scraps off the floor once, laughing the entire time. "This is where you belong," Andrea said, watching me crawl. But every night, I went back to the penthouse. I documented everything, photos, recordings, financial documents I found while cleaning. I learned that Andrea wasn't just stealing a company. She was working with a man named Leonard Cross, a weapons dealer, planning to sell Sterling's technology patents for illegal military weapons. This wasn't just theft anymore, it was treason. And then, in month 7, Jessica brought home a fiancé. His name was Brandon Kane, handsome, wealthy, charming. When I saw him, my world tilted. Brandon was my college boyfriend, the man I'd loved 5 years ago, who'd disappeared without explanation and broken my heart. Now, he was engaged to Jessica. He saw me across the room, and his face went pale. But he said nothing. Neither did I. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. "Meet me. Parking garage. Midnight. -B." I went. Against my better judgment, Brandon was waiting in the shadows. "Charlotte, I can explain—" "You left me," I said, voice shaking. "Now you're with her?" "I'm FBI," he said urgently. "Undercover. I've been investigating Leonard Cross for 3 years. I got close to Jessica to infiltrate his network. I didn't know about Andrea's connection to your father until 2 weeks ago. Charlotte, I never stopped thinking about you. Leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did. But the operation required it. I couldn't tell you. I still can't tell you most of it. But let me help you now. I wanted to hate him. Part of me did. But I needed allies more than I needed revenge on old wounds. Fine, I said, but this is business. Nothing more. He nodded, pain flashing in his eyes. Nothing more. Together, we worked. Brandon helped me plant FBI surveillance devices. We discovered Andrea's storage unit, filled with evidence from her previous victims, documents proving years of murders. I photographed everything, my hands shaking with rage and horror. But then, in month 8, I got sick. Not normal sick, violently, terrifyingly sick. Catherine rushed me to a private hospital where the doctor's diagnosis made my blood run cold, slow-acting poison, the same kind that killed my father. Andrea was trying to murder me. You have maybe 4 months without treatment, the doctor said. The treatment requires stopping all activities, complete rest. No, I interrupted. How long can I last if I keep working? Charlotte, Catherine protested, you'll die? Then I'll die finishing this, I said. She's not getting away with it. Not this time. So I kept working, even as the poison weakened me, even as every day became harder. I hid the symptoms, took medication to mask them, and pushed forward. Because some things are worth dying for. Finally, Andrea accelerated her timeline. The company sale was scheduled for 2 weeks away. She planned a massive gala, Sterling Industries' 50th anniversary, she called it. Really, it was her victory celebration, and she wanted me there, working as a server, as one final humiliation. The night of the gala, I could barely stand. The poison was winning, my body shutting down. But I put on the server uniform, painted on a brave face, and walked into that ballroom. Andrea looked stunning in a red gown, jewels dripping from her neck and wrists, bought with my father's money. Jessica wore silver, her arm linked with Brandon's, both of them playing their parts perfectly. I served champagne to people who'd known my father, who'd worked with him, and none of them recognized me. Why would they? I was just the help. Just trash. I stumbled carrying a tray, the poison making my hands shake. The champagne glass fell, shattered at my feet. Andrea's laughter cut through the music. Look at this trash. She can't even walk straight. Jessica sauntered over, holding her wine glass. Oops, she said, and poured the entire glass over my head. The cold liquid ran down my face as the crowd laughed. Clean it up. I got on my knees, gathering broken glass with shaking hands. This was it. The lowest moment, the final humiliation. Or so they thought. Andrea pulled me into a side room, away from the cameras and crowd. Jessica followed, both of them grinning like sharks. After tonight, you're done, Andrea said. I've arranged deportation papers with fake criminal charges. You'll be on a plane to nowhere by morning, and no one will ever hear from Charlotte Mercer again. Jessica laughed. We should have just killed you months ago like your pathetic father. Andrea's eyes widened. Shut up, you idiot. They both froze, realizing what Jessica had just said out loud. And that's when I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in 9 months. Say that again? I said softly. Andrea saw it then. The small recording device clipped to my uniform, the tiny red light blinking. Her face went white. You. Every word, I said, standing up straighter despite the pain, recorded and live-streamed to the FBI, to the press, to everyone who needs to hear it. Andrea lunged at me, but I stepped aside. We burst back into the ballroom, Andrea screaming, trying to explain, trying to control the situation. But it was too late. I walked to the stage, barely, each step agony, and took the microphone. I removed the wig I'd been wearing, the glasses, the makeup that had disguised me. Even weak, even dying, I commanded that room. My name is Charlotte Mercer, I said, my voice echoing through the stunned silence. Some of you think I'm trash. Some of you laughed while I cleaned your spills tonight. That's fine, because what you don't know could fill this entire ballroom. The screen behind me lit up. Catherine's doing. My father's face appeared, and I heard gasps of recognition. His pre-recorded message played, explaining everything. The fake will, the real inheritance, the murder plot, the poison. As he spoke, Mr. Harrison walked onto the stage carrying folders. Andrea screamed from the crowd. "She's lying! This is fake! She's a fraud!" "Am I?" I looked at her calmly. "Mr. Harrison, please present the documents." The screen changed, showing ownership structures, trust documents, financial statements. "Charlotte Mercer owns 90% of Sterling Industries," Mr. Harrison announced. "She has since her father's death. The company Mrs. Andrea Mercer attempted to sell doesn't actually exist, not with any real assets. The true Sterling holdings are worth $15 billion, all legally belonging to Charlotte." The ballroom erupted, people shouting, cameras flashing. Andrea collapsed into a chair, her face gray. Jessica tried to run. Security blocked the exits. Brandon stepped forward, pulling out FBI credentials. "Andrea Mercer, Jessica Collin, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and treason." More agents flooded in, surrounding Leonard Cross as well. Andrea looked at me, hatred burning in her eyes. "You ruined everything," she hissed. I walked closer, even though it hurt, even though I could feel the poison winning. "You murdered my father. You tried to murder me. You wanted me to disappear quietly, to be forgotten trash. But here's what you never understood. Trash is what's left after the valuable things are taken away. And you never took the most valuable thing I had, my father's love, his plan, his belief that I could beat you." I held up a small vial. "This is the poison you put in my food yesterday. Your fingerprints are all over it. It's evidence now, along with everything else." The police moved in. Andrea was still screaming as they handcuffed her, about injustice, about being framed, about how she'd given me a home. Jessica just stared at me, finally understanding she'd been beaten. "This isn't over," she spat. "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." The aftermath came in waves. Andrea and Jessica were sentenced to life in prison without parole. Leonard Cross faced federal charges, but more importantly, the investigation they sparked revealed 3 more victims, families who finally got justice, whose loved ones hadn't died in vain. I spent 2 months in the hospital, getting treatment for the poison. Catherine visited every day, teaching me about the business, preparing me for the empire I'd inherited. Brandon came once to say goodbye. The FBI was transferring him to another assignment. We both knew whatever we'd had was gone, broken by time and circumstance and lies, even necessary ones. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything." "You did your job," I replied. "We both did." He left and I let him go. Some wounds heal, but some scars remain forever. 6 months after the gala, I stood in my father's old office, my office now, but I'd changed it completely. More light, more warmth, photos of my parents on the walls. Sterling Industries had a new mission: ethical technology, charitable foundations, supporting victims of fraud. The company my father built was becoming something beautiful. There was a knock on my door. Beth, the kind co-worker who'd befriended me when I was a maid, poked her head in. She was VP of operations now. "Ready for the board meeting, boss?" I smiled. "Almost." I looked at my father's photo one more time. "We did it, Dad," I whispered. But later that day, I received a letter, no return address. Inside, a simple note: "You won this battle, but Andrea wasn't the only one. I have friends. Watch your back. This isn't over." A friend. I read it twice, then made a phone call. "Catherine? We might have a problem," she sighed. "Another one?" "Seems like it." I looked out at the city below, at the empire I now controlled, at the justice I'd won. But here's the thing, I survived hell once. Let them come. I'll be ready, because that's what they never understood. You can call someone trash, you can humiliate them, poison them, try to destroy them completely. But if they survive, they come back stronger, harder, more dangerous than you ever imagined. They called me trash while planning my murder. They laughed while I crawled through their hell, but I wasn't trash. I was a survivor. I was my father's daughter. I was a billionaire who'd earned her empire not through inheritance but through pain, patience, and perfect revenge. And if someone else wanted to test me? Well, I'd already learned the most important lesson. The quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous, and I'd been quiet for 9 very long months. Now it was time to be loud.